Blood trickled down Jasmine Wells's face as she stood defiantly, FBI badge clutched in her trembling hand. The officers who moments ago had her pinned to the ground now backed away, faces pale. Her sons watched from behind the cruiser, terrified. This park day was about to change everything. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed or experienced racial profiling in your community. The story I'm about to tell might seem unbelievable, but it happens more often than you think. Let's get into it. The morning had started perfectly for Jasmine Wells. At 38, the accomplished FBI agent specializing in civil rights violations had promised her sons a day free from work calls and case files. Malcolm, her serious 12-year-old, and Devon, her energetic 8-year-old, had been begging to visit Oakwood Community Park in their new suburban Atlanta neighborhood for weeks. The pristine playground with its towering oak trees and winding trails was advertised as the crown jewel of the community they'd moved to just 3 months ago. Jasmine watched her boys race toward the playground equipment, their excitement palpable in the crisp autumn air. She settled on a bench, coffee in hand, savoring this rare moment of normalcy. As one of the few black families in this predominantly white neighborhood, Jasmine couldn't help but notice the subtle stares from other parents. Some smiled politely before turning away, while others gathered their children closer as Malcolm and Devon approached. She'd grown accustomed to these microaggressions, the invisible boundaries that seemed to follow her family wherever they went. It was partly why she'd chosen her career path at the FBI, fighting the systemic injustices that continued to plague communities across America. Her attention shifted to a police cruiser that had been parked at the edge of the park for nearly 20 minutes. The officer inside, a stocky white man with close-cropped hair, hadn't stepped out but maintained a steady gaze in her direction. Jasmine felt her professional instincts prickle with awareness. Officer Bradley Cooper watched the Wells family with narrowed eyes, making notes on his dashboard computer. He'd received 3 calls in the past week about suspicious individuals in the park, and the department had instructed increased patrols in this affluent area. As Jasmine sipped her coffee, memories of the path that had led her here flickered through her mind. Her husband Marcus had been killed during his 3rd tour in Afghanistan 6 years ago, leaving her to raise their boys alone while navigating the demanding world of federal law enforcement. She'd fought twice as hard as her colleagues for every promotion, enduring the subtle and not-so-subtle biases that came with being both black and female in the Bureau. Her latest assignment had brought them to this suburb, though she kept the details of her work private, even from the boys. "Mom, watch this." Devon called, preparing to launch himself down the spiral slide. Jasmine waved, forcing her thoughts back to the present moment. She watched as Devon's ball rolled away from him toward a fenced area marked with a park maintenance-only sign. Without hesitation, her youngest son ran after it, ducking under the loose chain barrier to retrieve his toy. That's when Officer Cooper finally emerged from his vehicle, moving with alarming speed toward Devon. "Hey, stop right there." "That's a restricted area," he shouted, his hand instinctively resting on his holster. Jasmine was on her feet instantly, maternal and professional instincts converging, as she hurried toward her son. "Devon, come here, baby," she called calmly, even as her heart raced. Officer Cooper reached Devon first, his imposing figure towering over the small boy who now clutched his ball with trembling hands. "What's your name, son?" "Where are your parents?" Cooper demanded, his tone unnecessarily harsh. Before Devon could answer, Jasmine arrived, placing herself slightly between the officer and her child. "He's my son, officer. The ball just rolled away from him. We didn't realize this area was restricted," she explained professionally, her FBI training evident in her composed demeanor. Cooper's gaze hardened as he assessed Jasmine. "I need to see some ID, ma'am. We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area." "Suspicious activity. My son was just getting his ball," Jasmine replied, keeping her voice level despite the familiar injustice unfolding. She reached slowly for her purse, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Devon, go to your brother, please." Officer Cooper's radio crackled as he called in her information. "Dispatch, I need a check on a Jasmine Wells. African-American female, approximately 35 to 40, with 2 juvenile males at Oakwood Park." Subject was confrontational when approached about restricted area violation, possibly intoxicated. Jasmine's head snapped up at the blatant lie. She hadn't consumed alcohol in weeks, and her single coffee hardly constituted impairment. She deliberately chose not to reveal her FBI credentials, recognizing the opportunity to document a civilian experience of profiling. As she waited for Cooper to verify her identification, Malcolm approached cautiously. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked, his young voice carrying the weight of understanding beyond his years. Before she could reassure him, 2 more patrol cars pulled into the park, lights flashing. Parents began gathering their children, casting suspicious glances at the Wells family as officers emerged from their vehicles, hands resting on their weapons as though approaching a serious threat. What had been a perfect Saturday at the park had shattered into a nightmare Jasmine had seen play out countless times in her professional work. Only now her children were at the center of it. Officer Sarah Reeves stepped out of the second patrol car, immediately assessing the scene with more measured calculation than her partner. A 10-year veteran of the force, Reeves approached Jasmine and Officer Cooper with deliberate calm. "What's the situation here, Bradley?" she asked, her eyes briefly meeting Jasmine's with something close to apology. "Found her kid in the restricted maintenance area. She's been combative since I approached," Cooper replied, still holding Jasmine's ID and glaring at Malcolm, who stood protectively near Devon. "I wasn't being combative, officer," Jasmine corrected firmly. "I simply explained that my son was retrieving his ball. There's no signage indicating children can't approach that area, and the chain was down." Officer Reeves nodded slightly, clearly trying to de-escalate. "Miss Wells, we've had some vandalism in that section of the park recently. Officer Cooper is just following protocol. If you could answer a few questions, we can clear this up quickly." Cooper cut in before Jasmine could respond. "What are you doing in this neighborhood anyway? Don't think I've seen you around here before." The implication hung heavily in the air, that Jasmine and her children somehow didn't belong in this affluent community. Jasmine felt a familiar burn in her chest, but maintained her composure. Years of training FBI agents on how to handle high-pressure situations flashed through her mind, lessons she'd delivered confidently in climate-controlled classrooms now tested in the harsh reality of a public park with her. "Children watching. We moved here 3 months ago," she responded calmly. "And I'm not obligated to explain my presence in a public park, Officer Cooper." She discreetly activated the recording function on her smartphone, slipping it partially into her jacket pocket. The third officer had established a perimeter, effectively isolating the Wells family from the other park-goers who had begun to gather at a distance. Some had their phones out filming the encounter. Jasmine caught snippets of their whispered conversations. She must have done something. Those boys look like trouble. Why can't they just comply? Officer Cooper, emboldened by the audience and his colleagues' presence, began searching through Jasmine's purse without permission. "Officer, I have not consented to a search," Jasmine stated firmly, knowing her rights were being violated. "I have probable cause," Cooper retorted, pulling out a prescription bottle. "What's this, narcotics?" "Those are prescribed migraine medication," Jasmine responded, her patience wearing thin as Cooper twisted the prescription bottle to read the label. "Prescribed to Jasmine Wells by Dr. Elaine Chen." "Maybe we should call the doctor to verify that," he said with a smirk. "Or maybe you're distributing these in the park." Malcolm stepped forward, his young face a mask of indignation and fear. "My mom didn't do anything wrong. She's just here with us to play. Why are you treating her like this?" Cooper turned sharply toward the boy. "Step back right now, young man. Don't interfere with police business unless you want to end up in juvenile detention." Jasmine felt a surge of protective rage. "Don't speak to my son that way. He's a child asking a legitimate question." The gathering crowd had grown larger, with divided reactions playing across their faces. Some looked concerned about the officer's behavior, while others seemed satisfied that the police were handling whatever situation they had invented. Officer Reeves attempted to regain control. "Cooper, let's take a step back. Miss Wells, would you mind coming to the station to sort this out? Your boys can wait with family services until—" "Absolutely not," Jasmine interrupted. "I will not be separated from my children based on a manufactured suspicion. We came to the park to play, not to be harassed. The word harassed triggered something in Cooper. His face hardened as he grabbed Jasmine's arm roughly. That's it. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, resisting an officer, and trespassing in a restricted area. Jasmine's FBI training battled with her maternal instinct. In her professional capacity, she would maintain perfect composure, document the violations, and address them through proper channels. But as a mother watching her son's faces crumple in fear, the choice became impossible. A memory flashed through her mind, standing before a classroom of FBI trainees, explaining how to maintain composure under pressure. Your reaction can escalate or de-escalate a volatile situation. Always choose the path of de-escalation when possible. Now her own words seemed to mock her as Officer Cooper roughly spun her around, slamming her against the patrol car. Hands behind your back, now, he barked. Mom? Devon's terrified scream cut through the park as Cooper wrenched Jasmine's arms behind her and snapped handcuffs around her wrists, tight enough to bruise. Malcolm stood, frozen tears streaming silently down his face as he clutched his younger brother's shoulders. The crowd of onlookers had grown silent, many filming as a respected FBI agent, known only to them as a black mother in the wrong place at the wrong time, was publicly humiliated in front of her traumatized children. Have you ever wondered what it feels like when the tables turn so dramatically that everyone in the room stops breathing at once? If you've experienced that moment when power dynamics suddenly shift, comment number 1 below. If you believe police officers should be held accountable for profiling, hit that like button right now. And if you want to see more stories of justice prevailing against all odds, subscribe to our channel. Now, what would you do if you were in Jasmine's position? Let's see how this unfolds. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead as Jasmine sat handcuffed to the metal table in interview room 3. Her wrists bore angry red marks from the overly tight cuffs Officer Cooper had applied at the park. Through the small window in the door, she could see Malcolm and Devon sitting in the reception area, both boys looking shell-shocked under the watchful eye of a female officer. She'd been separated from them for nearly 2 hours now. Her repeated requests to see them denied as Officer Cooper processed her paperwork with vindictive slowness. The door swung open and Cooper entered with a middle-aged man in a crisp uniform adorned with captain's bars. Miss Wells, I'm Captain Richard Hayes, the older man said, his expression revealing nothing. Officer Cooper has informed me of the disturbance you caused at Oakwood Park today. Jasmine looked directly at Hayes, her decision made. Captain Hayes, my name is Special Agent Jasmine Wells, of the Federal Bureau of Investigation Civil Rights Division. I need to speak with you privately, and I need these cuffs removed immediately. Cooper laughed dismissively. Yeah, right, and I'm the director of the CIA. He turned to Hayes. She's been making wild claims since we brought her in. Without breaking eye contact with Hayes, Jasmine spoke clearly. My credentials are in the hidden compartment of my wallet. Agent number 742583. You can verify with the Atlanta Field Office Assistant Director Marcus Thompson. Hayes studied her face for a moment before nodding to Cooper. Check her wallet. Captain, you can't seriously believe, Cooper began, but Hayes cut him off. Check it. Now. Cooper reluctantly retrieved Jasmine's belongings and found the concealed pocket containing her FBI badge and identification. His face drained of color as he handed it to Hayes. The captain examined the credentials carefully before unlocking Jasmine's handcuffs himself. Officer Cooper, wait outside. Once they were alone, Hayes sat down across from Jasmine. I apologize for this misunderstanding, Agent Wells. Had we known, it wasn't a misunderstanding, Captain Jasmine interrupted, rubbing her wrists. It was racial profiling, plain and simple. And the only reason you're apologizing is because of my badge, not because your officer was wrong. Hayes had the decency to look uncomfortable. What exactly brings an FBI agent to our jurisdiction? Jasmine's gaze was unwavering. For the past 4 months, I've been leading an undercover investigation into civil rights violations within your department, Captain Hayes. Today wasn't supposed to be part of that investigation. I was off duty with my children. But Officer Cooper just provided me with first-hand experience of exactly why this investigation was initiated. The color drained from Hayes' face as the implications sank in. An FBI investigation. On what grounds? Multiple complaints of racial profiling, excessive force against minorities, and discriminatory policing practices in this district, Jasmine replied. The Bureau has been monitoring your department after receiving 27 formal complaints in the past year alone. She leaned forward. Today your officer fabricated charges against me, conducted an illegal search, falsely claimed I was intoxicated over his radio, and separated me from my children, all because a black woman and her sons dared to enjoy a public park in an radio. Affluent neighborhood. The door burst open as Officer Cooper returned with a man in an expensive suit. Captain, the chief wants this handled quietly. We can't have... He stopped short when he saw Jasmine uncuffed and sitting confidently across from Hayes. Officer Cooper. Jasmine said calmly, "You should know that everything that transpired in the park was recorded both on my phone and the body cameras you and your colleagues are wearing. That evidence is now part of a federal investigation." Cooper looked to Hayes for support, finding none. "This is bullshit. She was trespassing in a restricted area." "My 8-year-old son was retrieving a ball," Jasmine corrected. "And I'd be careful about adding false statements to the growing list of violations." The suited man stepped forward. "I'm Chief Walter Briggs. Whatever misunderstanding occurred today, I'm sure we can resolve this professionally, Agent Wells." Before Jasmine could respond, the station's front door opened, and Assistant Director Marcus Thompson strode in, flanked by 2 agents. His imposing 6'4" frame and immaculate suit commanded immediate attention. "Agent Wells," he acknowledged with a nod before turning to Hayes. "Captain, I'm Assistant Director Thompson. I understand you've been detaining one of my agents without cause." Hayes began stammering an explanation, but Thompson raised a hand to silence him. "Agent Wells has been leading an investigation into systematic civil rights violations within your department. An investigation that has now been compromised by today's events. Chief Briggs attempted damage control. Assistant Director, we had no knowledge of Agent Wells's identity. Officer Cooper was simply responding to a potential security concern in the park." Thompson's expression remained impassive. "And that response included excessive force, illegal search and seizure, false charges, and separating minor children from their mother without cause, all of which appear to align perfectly with the pattern of behavior our investigation has been documenting." Officer Cooper, sensing his precarious position, became defensive. "I was following department protocol for suspicious activity." If she had identified herself as FBI, why should she have to? Thompson interrupted. "Would you have treated a white mother the same way, Officer Cooper?" "Because our data suggests otherwise." Cooper's face flushed with anger. People always make everything about race. I was doing my job." The room fell silent at his outburst and revealing choice of words. Jasmine stood up. "I want to see my sons. Now." Hayes nodded quickly, eager to defuse the situation. As Jasmine left the room, she locked eyes with Cooper. "This isn't over, officer. Not by a long shot." She found Malcolm and Devon huddled together in the waiting area, their young faces lighting up with relief when they saw her. As she embraced them, Jasmine realized that her carefully constructed investigation had been irreversibly compromised. What had begun as a methodical collection of evidence had become intensely personal. Behind her, she could hear Thompson continuing to address the police leadership, their defensive posturing already beginning. Cooper stood apart from the group, his expression a mixture of defiance and unease. He still believed he was protected by the unwritten code among officers, the blue wall of silence that had shielded so many from consequences. What he didn't realize was that wall was about to come crumbling down, and Jasmine would be the one swinging the sledgehammer. 3 days after the park incident, Jasmine sat on the edge of Devon's bed, gently stroking his forehead as he finally fell into a restless sleep. For the 3rd night in a row, he'd woken up screaming, convinced that the police were coming to take his mother away. The nightlight cast eerie shadows across the superhero posters that had once brought him comfort but now seemed to mock the concept of protection and justice. In the hallway, she could hear Malcolm pacing in his room, the floorboards creaking under the weight of his adolescent anger. He'd barely spoken since Saturday, responding to questions with monosyllabic answers before retreating into his headphones. When he did speak, his words cut deeply. "Why do we live here? Nobody wants us here anyway." he'd muttered at dinner, pushing away his plate. Jasmine leaned against the doorframe of her older son's room, watching him pretend not to notice her presence. "Malcolm, baby, we need to talk about what happened." Malcolm yanked off his headphones. "What's there to talk about? Those cops treated you like a criminal because we're black. Same old story, right?" The bitterness in his 12-year-old voice broke something inside her. "It's not that simple," she began, but Malcolm cut her off. "It is that simple, Mom. You tell me to be respectful, to follow the rules, to work twice as hard. For what, so I can still be treated like trash?" He turned away, shoulders shaking slightly. "Dad would have protected us better." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. Jasmine fought back tears as she crossed the room to sit beside him. "Your father would be so proud of how you protected Devon on Saturday. You were brave when I needed you to be." Her phone buzzed with another message from Eleanor, her former mother-in-law. The relationship had been strained since Marcus's death, with Eleanor never quite accepting Jasmine's decision to remain in law enforcement as a single mother. The latest message was thinly veiled criticism, disguised as concern. "The boys can stay with me until things settle down. This job of yours is putting them at risk." Jasmine silenced the phone without responding. The following morning brought no relief. At FBI headquarters, Jasmine found herself in Assistant Director Thompson's office, facing questions about her judgment. "You should have identified yourself immediately," Thompson said, his usually supportive demeanor replaced with professional concern. 4 months of undercover work, thousands of man-hours potentially compromised because you wanted to prove a point. "It wasn't about proving a point," Jasmine countered. "It was about experiencing exactly what citizens in that community experience. If I'd flashed my badge, we'd never have seen Cooper's true behavior." Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. "The department is already spinning this, claiming you entrapped Cooper. Their union rep is talking about filing a formal complaint." He slid a file across the desk. "The case is being reassigned." "Jasmine, you're too personally involved now." Jasmine felt as though she'd been punched. "Marcus, you can't pull me from this case. No one knows it better than I do." "It's not my call," Thompson replied. "This comes from above. The optics are complicated now. A black female agent with 2 sons, personally targeted. The defense will claim bias." As Jasmine left the building, a text message from an unknown number appeared on her phone. "Not all of us are like Cooper. Some of us want to help. Reeves." Officer Sarah Reeves, Cooper's partner, reaching out was unexpected. Jasmine hesitated before saving the number, unsure if it was a genuine offer or an attempt to gather information. That evening, as she reviewed case notes at her dining room table, Jasmine discovered her case files had been flagged for internal review. Footage from Cooper's body camera had mysteriously become corrupted, according to the system log. Convenient technical failures that erased evidence were all too familiar in these cases. Her home security system chimed, alerting her to movement in the front yard. The camera showed nothing, but when she checked the door, she found a note tucked into the frame. "Back off, or your boys might find themselves without a mother, too." The threat sent ice through her veins. Returning to her computer, Jasmine found that other evidence was being systematically marked as inconclusive or inadmissible in the case file. The machine was already working to protect its own. Later that night, after checking that both boys were finally asleep, Jasmine found Malcolm's tablet under his pillow. Curiosity and maternal concern led her to check his recent activity. What she found stunned her. Malcolm had been systematically recording his own encounters with local police and security guards in their neighborhood, documenting times, badge numbers, and descriptions of interactions in a journal app. One entry read, "Officer D. Williams followed me and my friends, all black, from the corner store to Tyler's house. Drove past us 3 times. White kids from school walked same route yesterday. No police car." Her 12-year-old son was building his own civil rights case, documenting the everyday profiling that had become so normal he didn't even mention it to her. Another entry showed a video taken discreetly from Malcolm's pocket, capturing a security guard at the local mall, following their group of friends from store to store, while ignoring white teenagers who were being far more disruptive. As tears welled in her eyes, Jasmine made her decision. The system wanted her to back down, to let someone else handle the case, to prioritize protocol over justice. But the evidence in her son's tablet reinforced what she already knew. This fight wasn't just professional anymore. It was deeply, irrevocably personal. Tomorrow she would begin pushing back official reassignment or not. For her sons, for herself, and for every person who had ever been profiled, harassed, or made to feel unwelcome in spaces that should belong to everyone. The machine might be powerful, but Jasmine Wells had truth on her side, and she was just getting started. The corner booth at Margie's Diner was secluded enough for privacy, but public enough for safety. Jasmine arrived 15 minutes early, scanning the nearly empty restaurant before sliding into the vinyl seat. At exactly 9:30, Officer Sarah Reeves entered out of uniform in jeans and a sweater that couldn't quite conceal the outline of her off-duty weapon. "Thank you for meeting me," Reeves said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "I've been documenting things for almost a year now." Cooper isn't an isolated problem. It's systematic. Jasmine pocketed the drive without examining it. "Why are you doing this?" "You're risking your career." Reeves stirred her coffee slowly. "My partner before Cooper was black, Jerome Williams. Best cop I ever worked with. After he reported excessive force by another officer, he was found with planted drugs in his locker. Lost everything. That's when I started keeping records." The drive contained internal memos, patrol assignments, and body camera footage that had supposedly been lost in the system. Most damning were the shift assignments, showing a clear pattern. Black officers were deliberately kept out of affluent neighborhoods, while officers with multiple complaints like Cooper were concentrated in areas where residents of color had recently moved in. They call it community-oriented policing, but it's just harassment by another name, Reeves explained. Any black person in Oakwood is automatically suspicious. It's unofficial policy. After meeting with Reeves, Jasmine contacted Jordan Barnes, a local community activist whose organization had been documenting similar cases. They met at his small office, plastered with flyers, for Know Your Rights workshops and community meetings. "Agent Wells, we've collected 63 statements from residents in the past 8 months alone," Barnes said, spreading case files across his desk. But the pattern goes deeper than just profiling. He pulled out maps of Oakwood and surrounding areas, overlaying them with police incident reports. Notice anything? The concentration of police incidents directly correlated with areas where black families had purchased homes in the previously all-white neighborhoods. But there was another pattern emerging. These same areas were highlighted on a different map labeled Clearview Development Phase 2. "What's Clearview Development?" Jasmine asked, a chill running down her spine. "Only the biggest real estate developer in the county," Barnes replied. "They've been buying up properties below market value, especially in areas where crime has suddenly increased." The connection clicked instantly. Over-policing made neighborhoods less desirable, driving down property values and forcing families to sell at a loss. "Who runs Clearview?" Jasmine asked. Barnes pulled up an article showing a groundbreaking ceremony. "Officially CEO Thomas Wilson, but their biggest investor and board chairman is a man named Victor Richardson." The name was familiar. Councilman Richardson. The one always talking about police reform on the news. Barnes nodded grimly. The very same. Publicly, he's all about accountability. Privately, he's profiting from the displacement of black families through the very policing practices he claims to oppose. That evening, Jasmine returned home to find her front door slightly ajar. Her FBI training kicked in immediately. Drawing her weapon, she entered cautiously, clearing each room before calling out for the boys who were supposed to be at their after-school program. The house was empty, but not untouched. Her case files remained where she'd left them, but family photos had been rearranged. Some turned face down, others moved to different positions. The message was clear: "We can reach you at home. We know about your children." The next morning, Jasmine received a call from Devon's teacher, Miss Rodriguez. "Miss Wells, I'm concerned about Devon's drawings in art class today," she said hesitantly. "He drew what appears to be police officers with weapons drawn surrounding a woman and children. There's blood in the picture." Jasmine closed her eyes, the weight of what her youngest was processing, settling heavily on her shoulders. "I'll come pick him up early today." We've been dealing with a difficult situation." Meanwhile, Malcolm had found an unexpected source of support. His school counselor, Mr. Lamar Washington, had noticed the boy's withdrawal and anger. After several sessions, Malcolm began opening up about the park incident. "My dad used to tell me that when people show you who they are, believe them the first time," Malcolm shared during one session. "Those cops showed us who they are." Washington nodded understandingly. "My father told me the same thing." It's a quote from Maya Angelou. What Jasmine didn't know was that Lamar Washington had been a prominent civil rights attorney before switching careers after experiencing similar profiling that culminated in a false arrest and assault by officers. His legal career had ended when the trauma and subsequent cover-up left him disillusioned with the justice system. He'd chosen education as his new battlefield, helping young people navigate a world that often presumed their guilt based solely on their skin color. While picking up Devon from school, Jasmine received a call from her contact at the Bureau's technical division. "Agent Wells, I ran those background checks you requested. Officer Cooper has 17 excessive force complaints in his file. 15 were against black citizens. All were dismissed as unfounded." 17. "How is he still on the force?" Jasmine asked incredulously. "That's the interesting part." After his third complaint, he should have been placed on administrative leave pending review according to department policy. But each time the review was bypassed with approval from Captain Hayes. The connection between Hayes and Cooper added another layer to the corruption. As Jasmine helped Devon into the car, her phone pinged with a message from an encrypted number. "Check your mailbox. Don't tell anyone." Inside her mailbox was a padded envelope containing a USB drive. After putting Devon to bed that night, Jasmine plugged the drive into her laptop. It contained body cam footage from Cooper's previous encounters with black residents in Oakwood, footage that had supposedly been lost or corrupted in the official system. The videos showed a clear pattern of harassment, intimidation, and excessive force, all directed at black residents who had recently moved into the neighborhood. One particularly disturbing clip showed Cooper and another officer stopping a black teenager for suspicious behavior, which amounted to the boy jogging through his own neighborhood. The officers threw him against their cruiser, handcuffed him, and only released him when his white neighbor happened to pass by and confirm he lived there. The final video was from the previous month. Cooper could be heard speaking to someone off-camera. "Councilman Richardson wants these people gone before Phase 2 starts. Keep the pressure on. Make them understand they're not welcome here." The conspiracy was taking shape, more extensive and organized than Jasmine had initially suspected. This wasn't just about individual officers with prejudice. It was about systematic displacement for profit with political protection at the highest levels. As she stared at the screen, the pieces fitting together in a disturbing puzzle, Jasmine didn't notice the unmarked car that had parked across the street or the two men watching her home, one of whom was Officer Cooper himself. Do you believe ordinary citizens can stand up against powerful systems and win, if you think justice is possible, even when facing corruption at the highest levels? Comment number 1 below. If you've ever witnessed injustice and wished you could do something about it, hit that like button right now. And if you want to see more stories about fighting back against discrimination, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Now, what would you do if you discovered the people sworn to protect your community were actually working to destroy it? Let's see how deep this conspiracy goes. The body cam footage revealed patterns that extended far beyond individual prejudice. Jasmine spent the entire night analyzing video after video, mapping encounters against property records and development plans. By sunrise, fueled by coffee and righteous anger, she had uncovered a systematic campaign targeting black homeowners throughout Oakwood and neighboring communities. Police reports showed officers had been instructed to increase patrols, specifically in areas where black families had recently purchased homes. Minor infractions that would be ignored in other neighborhoods resulted in citations, arrests, and intimidation. The footage included snippets of conversations between officers discussing cleaning up certain streets before the developers move in. One video captured Cooper telling a black homeowner that people like you would be happier in Westside, referring to a predominantly black neighborhood across town. At 7 in the morning, Jasmine called Tariq Johnson, a former FBI colleague and data analyst who had helped her on previous cases. "I need you off book on this one, Tariq. This goes deeper than we thought." Within hours, Tariq had arrived at her home with his specialized equipment. "Show me what you've got," he said, setting up multiple laptops on her dining room table. Together, they cross-referenced police dispatch records with property sales and development permits. The data revealed a damning timeline. Whenever black families moved into targeted neighborhoods, police calls increased by 300%. Within 6 months, property values dropped by 20 to 30%. Within a year, 40% of these families sold their homes at significant losses. The buyer through various shell companies was always Clearview Development. "Follow the money," Jasmine murmured, an investigator's oldest adage. Tariq typed furiously, breaking through digital barriers that would have taken official channels weeks to navigate. "Got it," he finally said, turning a screen toward her. Clearview Development is owned primarily by 3 entities: Richardson Investments, Hayes Financial Partners, and— "Let me guess," Jasmine said grimly. Chief Briggs Tariq nodded. "Through his wife's family trust. They're all in on it." The conspiracy now had clear shape. Police Chief Walter Briggs, Captain Richard Hayes, and Councilman Victor Richardson were using the police department to systematically devalue properties, allowing their development company to purchase homes at bargain prices. The planned revitalization would triple their investment once the original homeowners had been driven out. Jasmine's phone rang. "Assistant Director Thompson. Jasmine Officer Reeves has been placed on administrative leave. Her captain found out she's been talking to you." Jasmine felt a cold dread. "Is she safe?" "Hard to say. She's not answering her phone. I've sent agents to check on her." 2 hours later, Thompson called back. Reeves was attacked in her home. Made to look like a robbery gone wrong, but she was beaten too methodically for that. "She's in the hospital. Concussion, broken ribs, broken fingers." The message was clear: the blue wall of silence would be enforced by any means necessary. That afternoon, Captain Hayes contacted Jasmine unexpectedly, asking to meet at a public library. She agreed, taking precautions and ensuring Thompson knew her location. Hayes looked haggard, the confident police captain replaced by a man clearly wrestling with his conscience. "I didn't sign up for this," he said, quietly sliding a flash drive across the table. "When Richardson and Briggs approached me 3 years ago, it was supposed to be about revitalizing declining neighborhoods. I didn't know they planned to cause the decline themselves." "You're complicit in civil rights violations," Captain Jasmine reminded him. "People have lost their homes, been falsely arrested, assaulted. Officer Reeves is in the hospital." Hayes winced. "I had nothing to do with that. Things have gotten out of control. Cooper and some others, they've taken this beyond what was intended." "What's on the drive?" Jasmine asked. "Everything. Emails between Briggs, Richardson, and Clearview Development. Meeting recordings. The original plans for which neighborhoods to target. And most importantly, the offshore accounts where the profits are going." He leaned forward. "I want immunity. I'll testify." While Jasmine met with Hayes, Malcolm, and Devon were with their grandmother Eleanor for their weekly dinner. Jasmine had been hesitant to continue the tradition given Eleanor's recent criticism, but the boys needed stability. What she didn't expect was Eleanor's change of heart. "Those officers had no right to treat you that way," Eleanor said when Jasmine arrived to pick up the boys. "My church group, we've been talking. Several members have had similar experiences in Oakwood. Reverend Michaels was stopped 3 times in 1 week driving through that neighborhood to visit his sister." Eleanor introduced Jasmine to 2 older women from her church who had witnessed their sons and grandsons being harassed by police in the same area. "We've been quiet too long," one of the women said. "If you're fighting this, we want to help." That evening, Councilman Richardson held a press conference addressing community concerns about policing. Standing beside Chief Briggs, he promised a thorough review of department policies while subtly discrediting the unsubstantiated claims of a federal agent with a personal agenda. Behind the scenes, Richardson was frantically working to contain the situation. Security camera footage from the police department's server room, included in Hayes' files, showed Richardson personally accessing the evidence storage system 2 days after the park incident. The next day, the FBI officially took over the investigation, establishing a task force dedicated to the case. Despite this, Jasmine was formally removed from the investigation, placed on administrative leave, pending review of her personal involvement. "It's for your protection, as much as the case's integrity," Thompson explained. "They'll try to discredit you, claim conflict of interest. This way, your evidence remains admissible." Reluctantly, Jasmine surrendered her badge and weapon, feeling naked without them. That night, as she checked the security system before bed, Jasmine noticed a slight discoloration on the living room smoke detector. Pulling a chair beneath it, she examined the device closely and discovered a tiny microphone embedded in the plastic casing. Not standard FBI issue, but a commercial-grade listening device. Her home had been bugged. Her first instinct was to remove it, but investigators' intuition stopped her. Instead, she left it in place, now aware that everything said in her home was being monitored. Moving to the kitchen under the guise of making tea, she sent a text to Thompson House: compromised. Need extraction for boys immediately. As she tucked her sons into bed, Jasmine fought to keep her voice steady. "Remember how we practiced the midnight game tonight? Might be a good night to play." It was their code established after Marcus died. If Jasmine ever mentioned the midnight game, the boys were to grab their pre-packed emergency bags and follow her instructions without question. Both children nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity behind their mother's calm demeanor. 3 hours later, as a sedan with tinted windows parked down the street from their home, Jasmine woke her sons and led them silently through the back door to where Thompson waited in an unmarked vehicle. Her children might be temporarily safe, but Jasmine knew the real battle was just beginning. The conspirators had shown they were willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their operation. And with her sons now hidden and secure, Jasmine was finally free to fight back with everything she had. Jasmine had known Vanessa Chen since journalism school before their paths diverged, one to the FBI, the other to investigative reporting. Now, sitting in Chen's modest apartment surrounded by case files and evidence, the two women strategized the most effective way to break the story. "We need to be smart about this," Chen cautioned, organizing the evidence Jasmine had provided. "These are powerful people with resources. If we publish without an airtight case, they'll bury it and discredit us both." "The evidence speaks for itself," Jasmine insisted, pointing to the financial records, body cam footage, and sworn statements they'd collected. "I've got testimony from 23 families who were targeted, plus Captain Hayes is cooperating." Chen nodded, her reporter's instinct, recognizing the explosive potential of the story. "I'll break it in stages. First, the pattern of profiling with the body cam evidence. Second, the connection to property devaluation. Third, the financial ties between the police department and Clearview Development. The first article appeared 3 days later. Selective enforcement bodycam footage reveals systematic targeting of black residents in affluent suburbs. The piece included carefully edited clips from Cooper's bodycam alongside interviews with affected families. By midday, the story had been picked up by national outlets, and Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The response was immediate and divided. Civil rights organizations called for investigations, while the police union denounced the edited and out-of-context footage. Social media erupted with hashtags supporting both sides. Councilman Richardson held an emergency press conference, portraying himself as shocked and concerned, promising a thorough investigation while subtly questioning the political motivations behind the timing of the allegations. Back at the secure FBI safe house where Malcolm and Devin were staying with Jasmine's sister Aisha, the fallout became personal. Malcolm's phone buzzed constantly with messages from classmates, some supportive, others cruel. "Your mom's trying to get good cops fired." Read one text from the son of a police officer. "My dad says she's lying about everything." Devin, always sensitive to tension, had retreated into himself, drawing picture after picture of their family surrounded by protective barriers against shadowy figures. Jasmine called daily, maintaining a brave front, while privately working around the clock with Chen and the FBI task force. 3 days after the first article, Chen published the second bombshell, "The Real Estate Conspiracy: How Over. Policing Drives Down Property Values." This piece connected the dots between police harassment and property sales, including testimony from real estate agents who had been pressured to undervalue homes in targeted neighborhoods. By the week's end, Jasmine's personal phone had received multiple death threats. Unmarked vehicles followed her between safe houses and meeting locations. The pressure was mounting from all sides. "We need to pull back," Thompson advised during a secure call. "Let the task force handle it from here. You and your boys are too exposed." "If I back down now, they win," Jasmine argued. "The only reason this story has traction is because I experienced it firsthand. I'm not just an agent. I'm a witness, a victim." The most disturbing development came when Officer Sarah Reeves, still recovering from her attack, was found unconscious in her hospital room. The official report claimed she had attempted suicide by overdosing on pain medication, but the toxicology report Jasmine obtained through Thompson showed inconsistencies with that theory. "They're silencing witnesses," Jasmine told Chen during a secure meeting. "We need to accelerate the timeline." Chen agreed, bumping up the publication of the third and most damning article, "Follow the Money Police, Chief City Councilman Linked to Fraudulent Real Estate Scheme." This final piece included the financial records provided by Captain Hayes, showing the offshore accounts and shell companies used to hide the conspirators' involvement with Clearview Development. Within hours of publication, Chief Briggs announced a medical leave of absence. Councilman Richardson denounced the slanderous accusations and threatened legal action against Chen and her publication. Captain Hayes, who had agreed to testify, was now under 24-hour FBI protection. The most surprising ally emerged when Eleanor Jasmine's mother-in-law appeared on a morning news program with 5 other members of her church community. "My daughter-in-law is a woman of integrity," she stated firmly, "and the experiences she and my grandsons endured are not isolated incidents. Our community has suffered this treatment silently for too long." She proceeded to share stories from members of her historically black church who had experienced similar profiling in Oakwood and surrounding areas. The public narrative was shifting, but the danger was escalating proportionally. Officer Cooper was placed on administrative leave pending investigation, but sources within the department told Jasmine he was still coming to work, still armed, and increasingly unstable. "He's been saying you set him up," Thompson warned, "that this whole thing was an FBI entrapment operation targeting him specifically." The situation reached critical mass when Jasmine discovered a listening device in the safe house where she was staying, meaning her location had been compromised. The same night surveillance footage showed Cooper and an unidentified man in plain clothes attempting to access the building's security system. Thompson immediately relocated Jasmine to a different facility. But the message was clear: nowhere was truly safe. "Your sons need to be moved out of state," Thompson insisted. "Until this is resolved, they're in danger." Though it broke her heart, Jasmine agreed. Aisha would take Malcolm and Devon to stay with their uncle in California until the investigation concluded and arrests were made. After seeing her boys off at a private airfield, Jasmine made a decision. It was time to stop running and set a trap of her own, one that would bring the entire conspiracy crashing down and ensure her family's safety once and for all. The predators thought they were hunting her, but they didn't realize she had been a hunter long before she became their prey. With her sons safely across the country, Jasmine implemented the most dangerous phase of her plan. Appearing vulnerable and isolated was the key to drawing out the conspirators. She accidentally allowed herself to be spotted at a coffee shop near her original home, making sure the information would reach Cooper through his remaining allies on the force. She deliberately left her protective detail behind, giving the impression she was operating independently and against FBI protocols. The bait was set. Meanwhile, her actual team, a small group including Captain Hayes, Jordan Barnes, and 3 FBI agents loyal to Thompson, monitored the situation from an operations center established in a vacant apartment overlooking Jasmine's home. Every room in her house had been equipped with hidden cameras and microphones capturing any intrusion or conversation. "They'll come tonight," Hayes predicted, studying Cooper's patrol patterns from department records he still had access to. Thursday is his designated administrative day, minimal supervision, maximum freedom of movement. At City Hall, Mayor Patricia Gallagher called a press conference announcing an independent investigation into the allegations against the police department. What the public didn't know was that Mayor Gallagher had received substantial campaign contributions from Clearview Development and had personally approved several of their controversial permits. Her independent commission consisted primarily of individuals with ties to either Richardson or Chief Briggs. "They're circling the wagons," Barnes observed, watching the press conference on a tablet. "Standard procedure. Create the appearance of accountability while controlling the outcome." Jasmine nodded. "Which makes tonight even more critical. They need to silence the sources before any real investigation can begin." As dusk fell, surveillance detected a dark SUV, circling the neighborhood 3 times before parking 2 blocks from Jasmine's home. Cooper emerged wearing plain clothes, accompanied by 2 men in similar attire. One was identified as Michael Roberts, Chief Briggs' former partner and current head of security for Clearview Development. The other remained unidentified, but moved with military precision. "They're armed," Thompson confirmed through the secure line, watching the feed from FBI headquarters. "Jasmine, it's not too late to bring in tactical." "No," she replied firmly. "If we move in too early, we'll never get the connections we need. Cooper's just the enforcer. We need him to implicate the others." Jasmine positioned herself in her home office, appearing to organize files. The perfect target. The team watched as Cooper and his associates approached from different directions using the cover of darkness and neighboring properties. They disabled the regular home security system with practiced efficiency, unaware of the secondary system installed by the FBI. "They've cut the phone line, and cellular jammer is active," Hayes reported. "Standard procedure for our tactical teams. Cooper's using department training." Jasmine continued sorting papers, apparently oblivious to the intruders now entering through the back door. She'd removed her sidearm as planned, leaving it visibly locked in a desk drawer, accessible but not immediately available. When Cooper entered the office, Jasmine feigned surprise that transformed into genuine fear when she saw the weapon in his hand. "Evening Agent Wells," Cooper said, his voice eerily calm. "Figured we should finish our conversation from the park." "Officer Cooper," Jasmine acknowledged, slowly standing. "Or is it Michael now, since you're not in uniform? Breaking and entering is a serious offense." Roberts and the 3rd man entered the room, closing off any escape route. "We're way past worrying about breaking and entering charges," Roberts said coldly. "You've become a significant problem for people who don't tolerate problems." Jasmine assessed her options, noting the positions of all 3 men. The confrontation needed to play out long enough to gather evidence, but not so long that she couldn't defend herself if necessary. "Let me guess. Briggs and Richardson sent you to clean up their mess. Or was it the mayor?" Cooper's expression flickered with surprise. "You don't know when to stop digging, do you? This goes beyond a few traffic stops in Oakwood." "Enlighten me then," Jasmine challenged surreptitiously, activating the recording device in her watch, a backup to the house system. "How many people are involved in this little real estate scheme?" Robert stepped forward menacingly. "This isn't about real estate. It's about maintaining community standards. Certain neighborhoods need to maintain their character." "Their character?" Jasmine repeated. "You mean their whiteness. Call it whatever you want," Cooper interjected. "The point is, you stuck your nose where it doesn't belong. Richardson has plans for Oakwood and the surrounding areas that go back 5 years. The police department's role was just Phase 1. And what's Phase 2? Forcing out every black family in the county. Phase 2 is redevelopment." The 3rd man finally spoke. "Clearview has investors waiting to transform those neighborhoods once the right demographic balance is achieved." Cooper moved closer, weapon still trained on Jasmine. "But none of that matters now. What matters is making sure you understand the consequences of interfering with progress." "Progress?" Jasmine laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call harassing families in parks, beating Officer Reeves, threatening children?" Cooper's face darkened. Reeves betrayed the department. "As for your kids, they would have been fine if you'd just minded your own business." The confession was exactly what they needed. In the operations center, Hayes was already coordinating with the tactical team positioned nearby. Jasmine needed to keep them talking just a little longer. "So what happens now? You kill an FBI agent and think you'll get away with it. The investigation doesn't die with me." Roberts smiled coldly. "This won't look like murder. After the stress of recent events, you tragically took your own life. We even brought your service weapon from evidence lockup to make it authentic." He pulled out a bag containing what appeared to be Jasmine's FBI-issued firearm, the same one you surrendered when placed on administrative leave. What Roberts didn't know was that Thompson had marked Jasmine's surrendered weapon with microscopic identifiers. If they used it in a staged suicide, it would prove tampering. "Before you do this," Jasmine said carefully, "you should know that Councilman Richardson is already cutting deals. He contacted the FBI this morning. It was a bluff, but Cooper's reaction was immediate and violent. That backstabbing politician, I knew he'd throw us under the bus." "Cooper, shut up," Roberts hissed, but the damage was done. "No, I'm not taking the fall alone," Cooper shouted. "Richardson and Briggs designed this whole operation. They chose which neighborhoods to target, which families to pressure. They're the ones making millions while we do the dirty work." In the operations center, Hayes nodded to the tactical team leader. "That's enough. Move in." What followed happened in seconds, but felt like hours. The third man noticed the hidden camera in the bookshelf and raised his weapon toward Jasmine. She dove for the desk drawer containing her backup weapon as Cooper turned on his accomplice, shouting, "No shooting! It has to look like suicide." The momentary confusion gave the tactical team the opening they needed. They breached all entrances, simultaneously filling the house with controlled chaos. Jasmine took cover as flashbang grenades disoriented the intruders. Cooper, panicking, fired wildly, hitting Roberts in the shoulder before being tackled by two agents. Within minutes, all three men were subdued and in custody. As they were led away, Cooper locked eyes with Jasmine one last time. "This isn't over," he threatened. "You have no idea how deep this goes." Jasmine, breathing heavily and nursing a gash on her arm from flying debris, simply replied, "Actually, I do. And now we have your confession on record." Outside, Thompson approached through the crowd of agents securing the scene. "You okay?" he asked, concern evident in his usually stoic demeanor. Jasmine nodded, watching as Cooper was placed in an FBI vehicle. "We got what we needed." Cooper implicated Richardson Briggs and mentioned investors we still need to identify. Thompson sighed. It was too close. If that tactical team had been 30 seconds later, but they weren't. Jasmine interrupted. "And now we have enough to bring down the entire operation." As paramedics treated her arm, Jasmine finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had transpired. The conspiracy had been exposed, the immediate threats neutralized. Soon she could bring her boys home and begin the long process of healing from the trauma they'd all endured. The system that had failed so many others had been forced to deliver justice this time. The fight wasn't over. It never truly would be. But tonight at least, she had won a critical battle. 3 months after the confrontation at her home, Jasmine sat in the back row of the federal courthouse watching as the judge read out the verdict in United States versus Bradley Cooper. On the count of conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom remained silent as additional verdicts were announced, guilty on all counts. Cooper's trial was just the first of many. In the months following his arrest, federal indictments had been issued against 12 police officers, Chief Walter Briggs, Councilman Victor Richardson, and 4 executives from Clearview Development. The conspiracy had proven even more extensive than initially suspected, with evidence of similar operations in 3 neighboring counties. Officer Sarah Reeves had recovered sufficiently to provide key testimony, her courage inspiring other officers to break their silence. The Blue Wall had developed significant cracks as more police personnel came forward, unwilling to sacrifice their integrity for a corrupt system. Captain Richard Hayes, granted limited immunity for his cooperation, had been appointed interim police chief with a mandate for comprehensive reform. His first official act was establishing a civilian oversight committee with real authority, including Jordan Barnes and other community leaders who had documented the abuses. For Jasmine, the professional vindication was satisfying but secondary to her personal recovery. The physical injuries from the confrontation had healed quickly, but the psychological trauma affected the entire family. Malcolm, now 13, had transformed his anger into activism, founding a student group called Youth for Justice that addressed racial inequities in their school and community. His natural leadership abilities emerged as he organized discussions and educational events about systemic racism and community policing. Mom, Mr. Washington says we should invite some officers to our next meeting, Malcolm told her one evening. He thinks it's important to build dialogue. Lamar Washington, the school counselor who had supported Malcolm through the darkest days, had become a regular presence in their lives. His background as a civil rights attorney proved invaluable as he helped the family navigate the aftermath and healing process. Devon's recovery progressed more slowly. The nightmares had gradually subsided, replaced by a newfound interest in art therapy. His therapist, Dr. Chen, noted that his drawings had evolved from dark scenes of threat and danger to increasingly hopeful images of community and protection. His latest drawing showed a diverse group of children playing in a park, while adults of all backgrounds, including police officers, created a protective circle around them. He's processing his trauma through idealism, Dr. Seventu, Chen explained. Creating the world he wants to see. Jasmine herself struggled with hypervigilance and occasional flashback symptoms of PTSD that she addressed through therapy and support groups for law enforcement officers. Her professional status had changed dramatically. After initially being sidelined, she had been offered a promotion to lead a newly established FBI unit specializing in investigating systematic civil rights violations within law enforcement agencies nationwide. You've demonstrated exactly the expertise and commitment this position requires, Assistant Director Thompson told her when offering the role. This unit is being created because of what you uncovered. The case had catalyzed significant policy changes. Attorney General Robinson announced a federal initiative to review police departments with patterns of civil rights complaints, focusing particularly on the intersection of law enforcement and real estate development, a connection that had been largely overlooked before Jasmine's investigation. Oakwood Park, where it all began, underwent its own transformation. The community came together to rename it after Dr. Marjorie Wilson, a local civil rights pioneer who had fought housing discrimination in the 1962nd. The rededication ceremony brought together residents from all backgrounds, a visible symbol of the community's commitment to change. Eleanor, Jasmine's once critical mother-in-law, had become one of her strongest supporters, organizing a network of church elders to serve as community grandparents who maintained a visible presence in parks and public presence spaces throughout the area. Marcus would be so proud of you, she told Jasmine during Sunday dinner, a tradition that had been firmly reestablished. Standing up when it would have been easier to back down, that's the woman he fell in love with. On the anniversary of the park incident, Jasmine took Malcolm and Devon back to Oakwood, now Wilson Park, for a community picnic. The difference was immediately apparent. Families of all backgrounds mingled comfortably. Children played together on equipment that had been upgraded and expanded, and community police officers engaged positively with residents. Officer Reeves, now promoted to Community Liaison Sergeant, approached with a smile. Quite a difference a year makes, she observed, watching Devon join a mixed group of children on the playground. Some days I can hardly believe it's the same place. Jasmine nodded, scanning the park with the habit of vigilance that would likely never fully disappear. The system worked this time, but only because we forced it to. The real test is what happens when the spotlight moves on. That's why we need people like you on the inside, Reeves replied, and people like Barnes on the outside, keeping the pressure on from both directions. As they talked, Lamar Washington arrived with snacks for the children. His growing relationship with Jasmine had been an unexpected bright spot in the past year, a connection forged through shared trauma and commitment to change. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park as families began packing up their picnics. Devon ran back to show Jasmine a friendship bracelet he'd received from a new friend, while Malcolm discussed plans for the next Youth for Justice meeting with classmates. Watching her sons, healing, growing, finding their voices in different ways, Jasmine felt a complex mixture of pride, hope, and determination. The system that had tried to break them had instead made them stronger, more aware, more committed to fighting injustice wherever they encountered it. The battle for true equality wouldn't end with court verdicts or policy reforms. It would continue in everyday interactions, in challenging assumptions, and refusing to accept the way things are when that way perpetuated inequality. As Jasmine gathered her family to head home, she knew their story was just one among thousands, some with far less satisfying resolutions. But today, in this park, where it all began, she allowed herself to celebrate this victory while recommitting to the larger fight. What happened in your community matters. Have you witnessed positive changes in how police interact with different racial groups where you live? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content that addresses these crucial issues. And share this video with someone who needs to understand that standing up against injustice, even when it seems overwhelming, can create real change. Thank you for listening to Jasmine's story. Remember that sometimes the most powerful act of resistance is simply refusing to be silenced. Jasmine's story teaches us that justice requires courage and persistence even when systems designed to protect us fail. True change demands action from both inside and outside broken institutions. When Jasmine faced racial profiling, she could have used her FBI credentials for personal protection, but chose instead to document the experience shared by countless others without her privilege. Her journey shows that individual accountability isn't enough. We must address the systemic issues that allow discrimination to flourish. The conspiracy linking police, politicians, and developers reminds us that racism often serves economic interests, making it even more resistant to change. Malcolm and Devon's different responses to trauma demonstrate how racial injustice affects even the youngest members of our society, creating wounds that require time and support to heal. Most importantly, this story reveals that transformation is possible when brave individuals refuse to be silenced, when communities unite across differences, and when those with power use it to challenge rather than reinforce injustice. Has racial profiling touched your life or your community? Share your experience in the comments below. If you believe everyone deserves equal protection under the law, hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that expose injustice and celebrate those fighting for change. How would you respond if you witnessed someone being racially profiled? What small steps can we all take to build more just communities? Share this video with someone who needs to understand the real impact of systemic racism on families and communities. Thank you for listening to Jasmine's powerful story. Remember that when we stand together against discrimination, we create ripples of change that can transform our world.